Alrighty, well, thank you. So for our superintendent's report this evening, there is really one item that is on the docket for the report, and that is to review the monthly COVID-19 learning plan. That is statutory via legislation this year to review our learning plans each month. And we typically do that on the first board meeting of the month. So I do want to review that, and then I do want to discuss a lot of the development of planning moving forward as we look to change up on our plans of our offerings to families in the coming months of the school year. So to start with, the reconfirmation of our plans for the month of January is that currently we are still 100% remote in through this month. We've been in a remote learning paradigm since the beginning of the school year, as we've dealt with the ebbs and flows of COVID surges and government edicts from Lansing and so forth. So we've been navigating those waters, and that continues. We've been, as I said, remote since the start of the school year. We did have plans to go in seat back toward the end of October to then be implemented in mid-November. That is right when we started back into that second surge. And us, like most districts in the county, or I should say all districts in the county at that time, had pulled back and had gone, mostly remote at that point, and have been since then. So we do have our highest needs population of special education students that we've been certainly prioritizing to get back in seat with looking at small group in-seat instruction for them. This would be our basic classroom students, our highest needs special education students. We also were scheduling for learning pods to begin this month, particularly at the latter part of the month. Again, keeping students that are attending in those as cohorted and small group, and of course adhering to masks and social distancing protocols. We've also put in place our Clear to Go daily screening app that for students that are attending any type of a activity, whether it's an athletic activity or it is a class or an after school type situation, they are reporting their screening information via the new app. As we move forward, which we'll hear about this evening, there are plans, hence, coming on the heels of the governor's announcement on Friday, in which she would like, or she's been pushing for all schools in the state to be offering in-seat instruction, whether that's full in-seat or hybrid, by March 1st. So, so we do have plans to comply with that request, which we will be going over again this evening. And that will involve the resurveying of families to capture their choice, because I'm very certain that their choices for many people will be different at this juncture than when we last surveyed in October. So that information will inform us in terms of upcoming schedules moving forward, should we desire to proceed with that this evening. When we look at the reconfirmation of each grade level, again, our pre-kindergarten programs, our ELC, if you go on the website, and this will be on the website, you can click on and get their learning plan there. They've been in seat as because preschool has very, very small classes. And that is a population that is, I'll say, least affected by COVID. And we've been, successful with those. Busy Bees is another that is open and in seat, providing a service to families. And that has been working out very well, small group. Athletics, again, we are under state guidance and through MHSAA guidance on athletics. And that has ebbed and flowed as those guidelines have changed via MDHHS orders or governor orders from the state. So right now, winter sports are due to continue as of January 15th, according to state guidelines. And of course, we're right now finishing up fall sports with any of the sports that are in tournament play that weren't able to finish out the season when the governor had shut down those sports back in early December. So those are resuming currently. So again, we keep trudging waters as guidance around us all changes. And I know families keep getting mixed messages about, well, how can you do this and not have that? And keep in mind that we're not making those rules. Largely, they're coming from state organizations that are governed by either MDHHS or by the governor's office. And we're following those guidelines as they're prescribed to us. And so many of these changes that we're all enduring and questioning often are coming from above us, and we are simply the messengers. So in athletics is one of those ever-changing paradigms, it seems. Our elementary grades have been in a defined schedule that has been remote. And likewise, all of their specials has been remote as well. And they have had, again, times for office hours, for group check-ins, interventions, asynchronous work. All of those have been taking place via remotely. Middle school has been in a defined daily schedule that has been focusing on cores and their electives. Again, they have designated block schedule in which they are reporting for both asynchronous and synchronous instruction through their periods each week. And they also have advisory classes for wellness checks and character education. High school, again, much like the middle school, has a defined daily schedule in blocks. And they are set up in gold days and purple days, in which, as you see there, certain hours report on those certain days. And again, they have a daily advisory class for wellness checks and their SEL, social emotional learning education. Again, with our highest needs students, trying to prioritize the servicing of those highest needs students in very, very small groups, coming together for a portion of the week. And trying to expand on those along with learning pods, ELL instruction, again, via mostly remote at this point. And again, plans are changing for getting more in-person, in-seat instruction with those highest needs learners. So I know Mary Ann is with us this evening, and she is our Assistant Superintendent for Student Services who oversees special education. Mary Ann, if you could just spend a minute kind of recapping on what we're currently doing for our students, our special education students, primarily of highest needs.
So in our self-contained or basic classrooms, we have 11 of those classrooms open and fully staffed currently, either 2 to 4 days per week, depending on the group size, to make sure that we are maintaining healthy distances and following all of COVID-19 guidelines. In addition, we are opening the high school learning pods next week for assistance in person with exams. That takes place on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. We are providing transportation. Coincidentally, most of our high schoolers have turned down our transportation offer, of course, but we extended it. The item of note there is we were able to send out a registration opportunity to all of our students at the high school who benefit from an IEP in the resource room setting. So this is a different tier of support than what we are currently providing for face-to-face service on a daily basis. So we offered the support to see if any students wanted, needed, or would benefit from face-to-face accommodations above and beyond the accommodations that are in place to support their remote learning. So we've had some families, some students take advantage of that. Our teacher consultant, Mr. Z over at the high school, is organizing that. And we are going to monitor the traffic flow and our groupings at the high school learning pods. And then in culmination with the outcome of our return to learn date and plan, we'll look at if it's feasible to sustain any learning pods at middle school or elementary level based on grouping, procedures, and staffing. Overall, we also audited every single one of our special education files. This is in parallel with some of our county compliance guidelines that we were targeted to have completed by December 31st. This is ensuring that every student with a disability was able to have their individual IEP reviewed and considered for what is called recovery services. So back in the spring, did any student with a disability experience more learning loss than their age-appropriate peers may have done in the school closure that we experienced in the spring? If so, we are designing a specially designed program for summer recovery services. And 100% of our special education students were also offered or implemented what's called a contingency of learning plan. So if circumstances arise and a student must stay home for remote education, or if the family chooses to stay home for remote education, or if the state declines in a way that a shutdown occurs above and beyond school-based decisions, then learning protocols are in place to support that student. This is a lesson that all of our providers across the state learned in the spring. So it's like a safety net that we have offered to put in place for all students with disabilities. So a lot of progress. I'm excited about the high school learning pods for exams. While I'm confident that accommodations and supplemental aids are in place in their current setting, we wanted to offer above and beyond services in person, whether or not the student wanted or needed the support if they have an IEP at the high school level. This will inform some of our observations and decision-making for middle and elementary, depending on the date of return to the seated option. So I know I gave a lot and I speak it every single day, so it's my vocabulary, but I'd like to answer any questions about the special education or accommodations from board members regarding our current reality. Anything you need? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Monroe. One of the required components of our review is our two-way interaction log, which essentially is our attendance log for the month of December. And so in December, we had 3 weeks, because of course 2 weeks of those were the holiday break. So you can see our daily two-way interaction rates or attendance rates essentially were 94.64% in the first week of December, 94.97, and followed by 93.62. So doing quite well with certainly our attendance rates through that month of December. As you scroll down, Julie, and again, this is posted on the website, so this has all the loggings of our attendance by building, from the beginning of the school year. So each week from the onset of the year, we are tracking our interaction rates with our students as we've been remote, just to keep a monitor on our level of engagement with our students. So right here is the three weeks of December that we completed, again, prior to the holiday break, broken down by each individual school building. And again, this is reflective of their attendance rates. DCI is our Diploma and Career Institute. That is our online virtual school. That is a statewide virtual school in which we have students participating in that program from all over the state. So essentially we have Avondale students that are in Traverse City, that are in Sault Ste. Marie, amongst other places. So, and that is serving primarily an at-risk population. It's a dropout prevention type of virtual program. And so you see the attendance rates there typically are a little lower than what we see in our seated population, and that's typical of that group. And in December, with the breaks and all that's going on in December, those have been traditionally a little lower than the others. And then board, in your packet, this just breaks down each of the 3 weeks by building. Again, that adds to the summary in the chart above. So again, all this information is on, will be on the website. It's just a running record, so to speak, of our engagement of our students as we continue to navigate online. The other required piece is the COVID reports and where we are at as a county where we are currently this past week with our COVID statistics in Oakland County. And the cases that we are seeing, although we're not at this point seeing what has been forecasted as the holiday surge, there has been, a little uptick of cases, but it has not been to the degree that I think was initially forecasted that it would be, which is a good thing. And I think that is certainly enabling districts to get back to offering in-seat instruction sooner than perhaps some had anticipated. I don't know that we're quite out of the woods yet of perhaps seeing a surge from the holidays, but we're certainly getting on the tail end of that. And the daily cases have been rather stabilized, particularly over the last week, which is giving, good indication. The 14-day average daily case counts is relatively stable. So that's a good indication that things are sort of leveling off. The average tests per days are going down, which that is another strong indication that things are getting more toward an upswing. The percent positivity over the 28-day period has dropped now to 9.12%. At one point, that was up over 13% when we were in the midst of the second surge a good 4, 5, 6 weeks ago. The healthcare capacity strength is stable. The testing, tracing, and containment remains strong, and the county risk level is still an E. Now, as a Board of Education, we had used that county level risk determination as a major variable in our decision-making relative to return in seat. And we had said that, well, when that county risk level gets to a C level, that would be a point in time in which we would be implementing in seat. And then when we reached a D level is when we would start the preparations toward that. We've learned as of last Friday that amongst the governor's announcement to urge schools to get back in in-seat session was making this A through E chart obsolete. So they are no longer utilizing that chart for the purposes of schools and school decision making on opening or closing. So they basically are not using that risk chart for that indication any longer. So, so as we discuss our plans for today, keep that in mind, is that there is no longer that A through E risk chart. That has been essentially thrown out at this point. So many districts like ours that were relying on that instrument, that rubric per se, are likewise having these same discussions this week in terms of looking forward and kind of where do we go from here. The bottom of this chart shows that, again, from a weekly basis, you know, what in the last week is in terms of age groups, who has trended up, who has trended down, who has stayed stable. And you can see that with the colored arrows in terms of the age groups that are trending upward. And again, these change on a weekly basis. But overall, I think the picture is getting better, and I say that, I'm knocking on wood. It's getting better, and we're not seeing the surge again that was once touted several weeks ago that we would see after the holidays. So hopefully that continues to maintain that trajectory. So any questions on either the COVID report or the attendance two-way interaction report or our current return to learn status?
I have a question.
Yes.
With the hybrid model that you've proposed, will the students be getting the same amount of time with the teachers, even though half of it's on remote? Or will it be like they're duplicating the information on the off dates?
So to answer your question, the hybrid schedule that we will be proposing is essentially the same. When you break down the instructional minutes, particularly with the core areas, they are essentially the same as what we are doing now in remote. So if we jump to the proposal with that we're looking at moving forward, as you saw highlighted in a memo that I sent out on Friday, being that we no longer have this C to E or A to E chart that regulates when we go back in seat, and being that things are seemingly stabilized or looking a little better, and with the governor's prompting that by March 1st we have in-seat offerings for students, we've been looking at how we can proceed with getting students in seat. And from an elementary level, we have looked at a hybrid model, and actually both elementary and secondary moving into a hybrid model. And I will say before we jump into these that, you know, folks will say, well, Jim, you said earlier on that hybrid models, you didn't like them and you're against them. And I'll tell you, yep, that hasn't changed. And I stand by those words that I said about hybrid models. I don't like them. And I do think that hybrid models do, you know, compromise some instruction. I do think it slows instruction down, and I do think that you don't get as much curriculum in a hybrid model as you would in a full 5-day situation. And we all want to be in a full 5-day situation. All of us want to be back at normal. I mean, we live for the day that we're back normal 5 days like we have been prior to COVID. The difficulty is in getting back to in-seat instruction. The social distancing parameters have not changed. So yes, the governor has prompted schools to get back to in-seat by March 1st. However, the protocols regarding the mandates on social distancing have not changed. So while we would love to offer full 5-day in-seat instruction, much like we were planning in our plans in the fall, because of the social distancing aspect and the capacity of our classrooms and what we anticipate to be now the demand for in-seat instruction will not allow us to. Essentially, we're being forced into a hybrid model because of the capacity of our classrooms. So honoring social distancing with the number of people that we sense want to come back puts us in a mode where I can only have 12 to 18 students in any given classroom in this district based on its size, its square footage, and keeping the social distancing parameters as they have been. Because we have to live by that, I can't put a full class load of students in a classroom on a single given day at the levels of percentages that people want back. When we surveyed back in the fall, when we were on a downward trajectory going toward that second surge, we were looking at trying to create a 5-day program with a building classroom capacity where most people, it was 50-50, and in some cases it was less than 50% that wanted back in seat. That's not going to be the case now. We're looking, as we survey, I'm certain we're going to be higher than 50%, probably higher than 60%. I mean, now that things are trajecting, upward in terms of the outlook on the COVID situation, vaccines are out, people's confidence levels are higher, certainly now, about in-seat instruction than they were in October. To accommodate that is going to be, I'll say, a detriment to offering 5-day in-seat instruction, because I can't put that amount of kids in a classroom at one time that want it. So, so that creates an issue. We're also not going to do like some districts who are trying to do the 5-day a week, and it becomes a wait list. And so then you've got parents who want to be in seat that can't, that are on a wait list, and they're forced to go remote. That's not fair either. So we're trying to straddle and come up with a mechanism that will give folks, albeit the best we can do at this point in time with offering in seat, getting kids into classrooms, getting that, getting us back in and working toward that full 5-day instructional paradigm that we all want to be in. But to start with, we're going to have to start in a hybrid until the social distancing parameters change. And that could change in the spring, and it may not change until we set up for the fall. We don't know. But to be able to accommodate that number of people is what is creating the need for a hybrid. And it's not a direction initially that we wanted to go, certainly long term or for a majority of the year. And we haven't. We've gone, solely remote. And if we go hybrid, we'll be going hybrid for, the latter part of this year. And again, I stand by the comments that I don't like them. But we do have a contingency of people that want to be back in classrooms, and you know, and we certainly want to comply and offer those options. But we have to deliver those options within the constraints we're under. So that's the decision making behind why a hybrid at this point in time. Now, if we were, you know, expecting 40%, 30% that only want in seat, then that becomes a different story where, yeah, you could offer 5 days because most people are still staying remote. And I could conceivably put 12 to 18 students in a classroom with that percentage that wants back. But that's not what we're anticipating. Certainly, you know, our offices have seen a great deal of demand about wanting to be back in seat as things are trajectorying better, and since vaccines are out. So from an elementary perspective, that hybrid looks like 4 half days, AM or PM, split by alphabet. You know, there's really 2 options to look at with that. The one was you could go 2 full days and then have 3 asynchronous days, or you could do 4 half days where it's AM, PM, and then you still have your asynchronous Wednesday. But as we looked at the 2 models of elementary, it certainly is much more preferred to have a schedule that is regular, routinized, and it's certainly, if a class is meeting at the same time every day, majority of the week, that's better than 2 days full. Also, you know, from a social emotional perspective, a teacher contact perspective, those teachers are then meeting with those students face to face throughout the entire week, not just 2 days of the week. It's a concern, and we've heard from other districts that have gone with 2 days, that then you have 3 asynchronous days in a weekend. So it's conceivable that a teacher doesn't see her student for 5 days. And to us, that's not good practice when, you know, a teacher is out of sync with their student for a 5-day period. So, you know, the half day from a child wellness perspective, as well as from an academic perspective, that degree of routine and consistency throughout the week is more beneficial than trying to cram everything into 2 days and then having asynchronous for the rest of the week. So, you know, that has been really the design behind why that half-day model. We also, in looking at the alphabet, you know, we've got families who's have children in their household that have different last names. What we would do is we would be careful to make sure that the students that are in that household, whether they have different last names or not, are together. So we would certainly make those accommodations. We also would make sure that classes are balanced. So in an individual classroom, you may have, you know, you could have, you know, 12 kids that are in A through L and 4 kids that are in M through Z. You know, we would make sure and make those adjustments to balance that out. So we're saying as a guideline, it would be A through L and then M through Z would be attending. But we would make accommodations to balance classes and to, you know, again, with students with different last names and so on, so that they would attend on the same days, at the same time of the day, that type of thing. So that's not in stone for everybody, but that's how, you know, we're defining it from this standpoint. So Secondaries would be a little different in that secondaries would have, they would maintain their block schedule. They would have their purple and gold days, and they would just
Dr.
rotate through
Shores,
the week
before we,
with purple days and gold days. I'm sorry.
Dr. Shores, before we jump to the secondaries on the elementary, how would transportation work, or is transportation not in the plan for the half days?
Yeah, so transportation is in the plan. So folks that need bus transportation, that will be available at the noon hour. So we've already have been planning with transportation to adjust their routing to accommodate that middle of day bus run to do drop-offs and pickups.
Okay.
So so that would be available for those families that want that. Yep.
And no one will be eating lunch at schools.
So the lunch, we would not be serving lunch per se at schools. There'd be snack times, certainly, but that lunch period for elementary, we would not have. That would be a transitionary period. We would be sending lunch home with the students. And as far as the students arriving in the afternoon, we'd probably be providing something for them more on a snack basis for the afternoon. And the lunch factor, you know, for schools that have gone through the lunch periods, that has been problematic from a contact tracing perspective, because of, you know, that's when classes, even though you try to keep them together on the playground and such, kids are kids, and they don't stay together. And so of cases where there has been COVID situations in schools that have been determined to have happened on playgrounds and such, this eliminates that difficulty or that frustration from the contact tracing standpoint. Again, the key is to keep kids cohorted as much as possible, and doing this is one less area that seems to be of higher risk in the school day than others.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
yeah. Yeah. So, and then with busy bees and such, you know, again, we are looking at avenues to assist families with those that would need childcare in those half days that they would need childcare. So we are currently, you know, investigating those opportunities to see what we can do there to, you know, assist families where we can. In the off time where they are not in the classroom, they would be doing asynchronous work. So if you're an AM student that's in person, in the PM, you'd be doing asynchronous work. And we'll put up a few of the schedules just as a these are skeleton schedules. So for instance, here's an elementary schedule. This is if you are in a morning schedule. So you can see, again, the classes meet Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Wednesday is an asynchronous day, and it's an asynchronous day for all students and staff, regardless if you are in seat or remote. And again, we are offering both choices for students, families to be either staying remote as they are or coming back in seat. So you can see how the morning is split up with their activities and their studies. So in the first thing in the morning, they'll have their morning meetings and their positivity project, character education lessons. They will then move into an instructional block of math and language arts that will span most of the mornings. They will have specials, again, in person. That is a 30-minute period that they'll have their art, PE, and music through the week. They will then have their science and social studies block in the latter part of the morning. They will have a grab and go lunch that we will, if they register for a lunch, much like a breakfast, they will take that with them. And then they proceed home for the afternoon. In the afternoons, then would be where they would have independent work, and we would also have interventions taking place. Our interventionists would be working with small groups via remotely in those half-day sessions. On the Wednesdays, if you scroll back up, Julie, the asynchronous Wednesday, you can see that they will have office hours on those Wednesdays, student support, outreach, interventions will be occurring on Wednesdays. All of those small group intervention type of activities will be a part of that Wednesday as well in those mornings. And then if you scroll down to the afternoon, Julie, that continues into the afternoon. And then we do have staff PLC time that is the latter part of the day on those Wednesdays for them to collaborate together, both the in-seat and the remote teachers. Now, we have said that if you go remote, that you would have an Avondale teacher in that remote. And that's where it's critical that when we send out surveys for folks to reconfirm what their choices are, because we have to reshuffle staffing primarily at the elementary level so that we can maintain an Avondale teacher for the students that want to continue remote. We are not going to do streaming at the elementary level, unlike some districts around us that are doing streaming at the elementary that has not, I'll say, worked well for families. It is very hard to stream, particularly lower elementary students, into a live classroom and maintain the engagement and maintain the degree of student-teacher connectivity when the teacher's trying to manage a class, particularly of kindergartners, and then you have a set of students online at the same time that you're trying to engage. Very difficult for the teacher, not ideal, and I'll say it's inequitable for the students primarily that are remote. So to be more equitable, we are wanting to keep our students who are choosing to stay remote with an Avondale teacher that is teaching that group remotely, not some piecemeal type of a solution like four-letter districts around us. So that takes some staffing changes. And so that's why it's imperative that those surveys be filled out so that we can take the time to staff those appropriately. If you can move to the afternoon schedule, Julie.
And Dr. Schwartz, just real quick question. So it's more of going to be a preference form than it is a survey. So a survey is asking for opinions.
That's correct.
I think we really want to, just for the audience out there, it's a preference form. It's either are you going to be in seat in this block schedule this goes through, or are you going to have your child remote, and then we're going to ask transportation questions and so on. So it's more of a preference. I don't want to have anyone think that we're surveying for opinions again, because really at this point we're looking for more of a preference of what option you want.
That's a great point, Mr. Tischer. Yes, thank you.
Okay. Yep.
Dr. Schwartz, can you also explain why we're going asynchronous on Wednesdays? I know that at the secondary schools, we're doing it partly because it's going to be different cohorts. We're cleaning in between. Why are we doing that model and not just going 5 days, AM and PM, with the elementary?
Well, because that is time for a couple of things. One is deep cleaning of the facilities. So that there is time needed in the middle of the week to do that. So all buildings will be deep cleaned during that time. But it's also essential for time for the teachers to have that time where they are working together from a remote perspective, being in sync with the in-seat, because there's a lot of, I'll say, lesson planning that has to be done. And particularly when you are now requiring teachers to teach remotely through their asynchronous work and teach in seat and collaborate with those that are doing solely remote, there's a lot of moving parts that we need to keep synced instructionally. And so those Wednesdays are a time for our teachers to have that time of planning together. And it's also for support. And it also gives us time to work with small groups of students from an intervention perspective that isn't pushing on the time that kids are in other core area assignments and so on. So, having that asynchronous time is critical from a planning perspective. And districts around us that have attempted to do the 5-day AM, PM, many of them have changed to include that asynchronous time because they have found that they need it to be able to be in sync with each other. From a professional development standpoint, from a lesson planning standpoint, from a data analysis standpoint. So all of those types of activities occur on a Wednesday. So aside from the buildings being cleaned. So
Gotcha.
yeah, so that's the major rationale.
One other quick question. I'm just curious when we'll know anything about the Busy Bees opportunities, because I can only imagine that that would be a big factor in people making their decision. Will that be available before we're sending out this questionnaire?
I don't know, Marianne, I don't know. I know Marianne's been interfacing with Peggy and Busy Bees and working on some planning. I don't know if you have any information on that at this juncture.
As of today, so because the update from the governor came out on Friday, we've been working rapidly to assess capacity needs, as you can imagine. As of today, I have been able to confirm with Busy Bees that any student who's currently seated in Busy Bees will remain to be able to have that seat, whether it be AM, PM, or that Wednesday student support day. We are currently trying to assess staffing to see if we are able to open up any additional seats. So will that information be available by tomorrow? No, because we don't know the need of additional, if any, seats, but we do know that we can support the students who are currently benefiting from Busy Bees on that 5-day full day program that they're currently running. Will have their AM or PM and Wednesday student support day seat at Busy Bees.
Thank you.
Hey, Marianne, it's Chip. Is that something we can get out sooner? I mean, rather than later. I know you're working real hard for this, but I have concerns with parents, elementary parents, that now, I mean, this could be, if they're not working remote, they've got to make plans for 4 days a week now going forward if this passes, and they might not have someone at home ready to receive their child when they come home, or get their child on the bus or whatever it may be in the afternoon as well too. So is there, I think we can do that.
We are currently, Peggy and I have been actively recruiting staffing. The other piece is capacity. We've been able to identify that we can remain at the Meadows location, the central location for Busy Bees as it is right now. So quite honestly, we need to know the need that will be expressed in the enrollment confirmation, and then be able to secure staffing. Now, I believe that it's estimated that we would have the room for at least 1 or 2 more classrooms. The way we're trending right now, however, that's the equivalent of 4 additional staff members. So the survey is scheduled to be able to be published this week to parents. And I will put as many descriptors as I can into that enrollment confirmation form, but I won't have guarantees of the number of staffing.
So is that just going to be at Meadows? So we're not going to try to offer maybe smaller groups at the actual elementaries?
So currently it's scheduled at Meadows with the social distancing guidelines, and I went and observed elementary pickup and drop off at different locations around Macomb County who have been in seat for different reasons at different times. None are running their before and after school childcare because of the COVID regulations, where we would be able to be running them at Meadows. The logistics piece is that we are, let's say if you are at your busy bee seat in the morning, that transportation would do a stop at Meadows to then go to the afternoon run at the assigned elementary building. That also works with Chartwells to figure out lunch at Meadows for those busy bee students, because they need to be able to have access to breakfast, lunch, and snack. So those are all rapid things that since Thursday night, Friday afternoon, we've been trying to navigate.
Sure, sure. Thanks.
Mhm.
All right. So we do understand that need. We're looking at the possibilities that we can provide as much as we possibly can to offer, an expansion perhaps on those abilities to accommodate AM and PM above what we already have. The PM schedule is just taking the AM schedule and flipping it. It's really no different, other than, as you see here in the mornings, is when you have your small group time, your intervention times, more of that concentrated one-on-one small group scenarios. Asynchronous work as well will occur, and then they would meet in the afternoons with their attendance and their positivity project time, math and ELA block, their specials in person, followed by their science and social studies block at the end of the day. So again, when you take a look at the instructional minutes of teacher contact time with students, it is fairly similar to what is being offered now in a remote situation, as we've looked at it. For those that are choosing remote, if you want to put that one on, if you're an elementary student who's going remote, the schedule will look like what you see in front of you in terms of, again, mirroring much like what the in-class students are receiving in terms of their morning meetings and their positivity project lessons, their math and their ELA block. They will then have their science and social studies block. Following that, their lunch recess on their own. Then they have their independent work and intervention time in the afternoon, their asynchronous lessons. Specials largely in remote, moving forward in this paradigm, will be asynchronous. It is going to be very difficult logistically for our small core of specials teachers to be doing in-class and remote at the same time. So largely those that would be choosing to stay remote would have asynchronous specials lessons. We're still exploring the logistics of that, but again, we have a very finite number of elementary specials teachers, and they can only be in so many places at once. So, so that largely may be the case there. Office hours with our staff would be available in those afternoons. And then of course there's PLC time for those teachers at the end of the day. And again, their instructional minutes compared to the in-seat instructional minutes are just about the same, within 1 minute, 2 minutes of each other. So again, we're trying to be very consistent with, from an equity perspective, in terms of anybody who's choosing to stay remote or coming back in seat. So that very broadly is the elementary schedule. And as we move forward, or should we decide to move forward, that the individual building principals certainly will have more of a tailored schedule to their buildings with their staff, and they'll be presenting meetings, coffees, or town halls per se, to give specific information as it pertains to their building, their schedule. But this is the skeleton outline of the schedules for elementary. From a middle school perspective, we want to put up a middle school schedule. Again, a middle school schedule is maintaining the blocks that they are currently in. You can see there are purple days and there are gold days. And again, those would be split by alphabet. So you'd have A through L attending on Monday and Tuesday, and then you would have M through Z attending on Thursday, Friday. They developmentally, I think, are, from a best practice standpoint, better able to have larger gaps within their individual contact time with teachers than elementary, which is why they can, you know, their 2-day a week, full day contact time, not 4-day, half day contact time at that level. There's a different level of independence at secondary. So we have those blocks of time that are, which we're doing currently. And again, you have the asynchronous days on Wednesdays for much the same as we talked about for elementary in terms of student support, small group, intervention time, and then teacher PLC time that is there. If you are a remote student in middle school, you'll largely be streaming into the classrooms. So there will not be much of a staff change. There may be some staff changes, but it will be minimal to accommodate remote in the middle school. And likewise with the high school, there'll be little, because streaming will be a major mechanism, or being involved in the Zoom meetings with the rest of the class in those classrooms will be the major paradigm. So I know Mr. Ort is with us online, and Jason, is there any other information about your schedule that you'd like to share just as a highlight?
You know, honestly, you pretty much hit all the main highlights. You know, obviously we're still doing everything we can about the social distancing in the hallways and the classrooms and the lunchrooms. You know, Wednesday we're working on a plan for student enrichment and finding ways to help students on that asynchronous day either catch up or move ahead. But you know, really, we're really trying to stay in alignment with the high school and GATE. For those students that are taking high school courses, it was important for us to be in sync with them, not only for the instructional standpoint, but also for the transportational standpoint as well.
Yeah.
Just a question, just to reiterate, Dr. Schwartz and Mr. Ort. As we talk about the remote and the students that want to stay remote, or the parents that want to, caretakers that want to keep their students remote, so that's going to be a different scenario than the current remote scenario that we're in now, because there's going to be one class. So if you're remote, you're actually streaming into the live class versus having a teacher that has every student remote, right? So that teacher's responsible for both the students in the classroom and the remote students at the same time. Is that correct? Okay. Just wanted to make that clarification.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
Mr. Johnson, you're correct. That you know, so it is a little different than what they are doing now.
Right, because where students now have the benefit of having that teacher's, I'll say, full attention
Right.
of that remote environment, that wouldn't necessarily be the case going forward.
Well, one of the things that Mr. Wilson has mentioned, and I agree with, we're not going to be doing a true like live streaming model. The teachers, because of the social distancing protocols that we have to follow, we're not going to be able to have like collaborative lessons where students are working in small groups at one table, because that would violate social distancing protocols. So the teachers will be teaching in front of their screen, just like they are currently. They'll be able to do some more things in the classroom, but this will not be something where the teachers are in front of a camera that's mounted on the wall. They're going to be in front of their computer and still be able to maintain some type of connection face-to-face virtually, as well as face-to-face in the classroom. Again, it's not ideal, but it's a step in the right direction.
Yeah, that was my question too, Mr. Ord, is essentially it's hosted learning as opposed to, like you said, true streaming here where you've got a bunch of live bodies. They're not looking at a screen and then the teacher's got to look up and see who's responding on the screen. This is really hosted learning, and the students that are in person get the benefit of the little bit of socialization that'll be allowed in the classroom. But really it's from an instruction standpoint, they're all on devices, they're all getting the same lesson plan, right?
Yeah, because of the one-to-one rollout that our technology department has been amazing at making sure that our students have, devices, and if something breaks down, they're getting it really quickly. But because of what we have now for our students, this is a more equitable way to offer the instruction to our students. When you're looking at a true live stream, it's a little bit more difficult to say that the students that are learning from home, learning remotely, are getting the same attention.
Yeah.
This way, it is much more of an equitable way to deliver instruction. It's not perfect, but to me, it's a much more equitable manner.
Yeah. Well, I think we all can appreciate that the physical act of leaving the four walls of your house on some sort of regular basis and seeing familiar faces, while it seems almost inconsequential, especially if we're talking about students still essentially having education on a device, that what appears to be inconsequential, that socialization, is probably one of the biggest gaps we have today.
I cannot wait to see students in my building.
Mr. Ord, I have a question.
Yes, Ms. Davis.
So with the students that will be returning to the building and they're bringing their devices, do we have a plan in place for being able to charge? Because Chromebooks don't necessarily hold quite battery life. So what's the plan going to be for this? I'm sure we only have so many outlets in a classroom.
Right, that's something that my assistant principal and I have discussed a little bit. Coming from my old district where we were one-to-one all the time, we had small charging stations, which were very inexpensive, basically like power strips, if you will, that we allowed students to use. That's something that we're still working out, but that is not something that is a great cost, because not all kids will need to charge at the same time. And because of the the hybrid model, the class sizes, we're not going to deal with a classroom of 30 kids where 15 need to charge. Hypothetically, we're dealing with a classroom of 15 where maybe 7 need to charge. Which is much more logistically possible. But no, that's a great point. That is something that all buildings will have to deal with. But it's not a big thing based on the model that we're coming back to deal with. It's not insurmountable. It's very doable.
Thank you.
Hey, Jason, just to add on to what you were saying, Bruce and I had discussed this, and we actually have ordered a sizable amount of spare chargers to have in the buildings, should a student forget their device or their charger at home. And then we were exploring other options in terms of charging stations and that kind of thing. But I think there will have to be a communication process in place at each building just to ensure that students are making sure they do charge their devices, but we do have a sizable amount of spare charging power cords on hand as well.
Are we going to be getting into some of the logistics of things like, will the students go to their lockers? How are we handling band and choir? Are there more distancing requirements for that and other things associated with the specifics of going back?
Well, I can tell you that with the lockers, our original plan for the middle school for the lockers was not to put them into use for this year. I have not heard any discussion otherwise. I would prefer to keep them out of use for right now. When it comes to choir and music, that's something I'd like to have longer conversations with our music and choir directors about. Because you're right, it's difficult when you're asking kids to keep a mask on, but play a wind or a brass instrument, or a choir, the sound muffled. So that's something we're going to have to work out with our music teachers and also Dr. Schwartz about what's going to be appropriate, because that's coming from two music teachers, is my parents. They're asking me that, and I look at them like, I don't know, Mom, just leave me alone. I'm trying to figure out just how to get kids back first. But no, that's a legitimate concern. Plus the ensemble, the virtual ensemble versus the in-person ensemble, and how do you mesh those together? So there's a lot just from a logistical standpoint that I don't envy the music teachers, but we're going to work with them.
Well, and I know that the music teachers are working with districts that are already hybrid and have been doing this. So they're not working in isolation. So they have their own group, their own network that they are conferring with to get strategies and ideas. And I know many districts, particularly at the secondary level, to your point about lockers, they are not using them because that's where students congregate. And so they've taken the backpack model, and students, unfortunately take their book bag to class to class to class. They don't stop off at a locker where they can then, group up and not socially distance. So, the idea is to keep traffic moving in the hallways and create unidirectionality as much as you can, and no congregating. So, and lockers is a deterrent to doing that. So, so likely we would be doing the backpacks for the time being. All right, moving to the GATE, our gifted and talented school, their schedule, again, much like middle school, much like high school, this is their 6th and 7th grade schedule. They would be blocked in a very similar situation as the middle school is blocked for their particular courses that they're taking throughout the day. Again, the same with the asynchronous day on Wednesdays for the same purposes for that school. As you scroll down, Julie, the elementary portion of GATE, the 2 through 5 grade, again, is you can see that they also have where they are blocked Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, much like the middle school, because that entire school group is following more of a middle school schedule, which is why it's organized this way. They are more of a middle school schedule than they are an elementary schedule, just traditionally in that program. And so likewise, this is the elementary portion of their constituency likewise follows a more of that block type, group 1, group 2 scenario from Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. And you can see how they have their time blocked out on those mornings and afternoons. Kate Martin is our principal, and I think she is with us today. Kate, is there any information or highlights about your schedule that you'd like to share?
Hi, everyone. Good evening. I think that we're very similar to Jason at the high school and what he was describing. We are going to try and use the lockers in an every other locker fashion, and we're going to use them in a more, in a way where the teachers are going to be in control of who goes out to the lockers at what time, because we use those for our elementary students as well. since we don't have cubbies or areas like that within our classroom like a typical elementary school would. So since we have, if I just speak to the elementary section for just a moment, the 2nd through 5th that we're looking at, we are going to continue really with the same sort of block schedule with our special area classes where they are by trimester. So that's going to continue just because we really don't want the students to have to, take art again when they've already taken it in first trimester. So we're going to continue and try and keep the same routines and schedules as closely as we can. Of course, try and keep all of our students with their same teachers is the goal. And try and continue to make things as engaging and as possible. And then for the middle school, we really the biggest reason why we continue to be on closer to the middle school than the elementary is because our in-district students take the middle school buses to get in person at our school. So that's really the biggest reason why we're continuing to follow that schedule and times and everything. But our middle school teachers are also going to cohort together just to make sure that our students are going to be able to switch between their same schedules and continue to be enrolled in all the same classes. Some of our students are also enrolled at the middle school as well. So we want to just try and accommodate that. So like I said, everyone can kind of seamlessly move into this new hybrid model.
Quick question for those that are traveling to the language and band classes within the Gate Middle School students. Will they be actually traveling or will they be doing those remote or how will that be handled?
No, so they're actually going to be, whether or not they choose in-person, hybrid, or remote, they're going to be joining the Avondale Middle School classes remotely via Zoom. We didn't want to put them on yet another, the whole goal is to keep them in one space and to not be exposed to, too many areas and too many different people on a daily basis. So if we, put them on a bus to go to the middle school and then they, walk through the halls to get to that class and then left and came on a bus back, I wouldn't feel right about that. And so they are going to just Zoom in from their class at Gate. Any other questions?
Just real quick, and this is not necessarily Gate, but it's also for middle and high school. I know at the elementary school, and I can tell you from the Oakland County School Board President's meeting that I attend, almost every other district that's going hybrid has eliminated lunches at the elementary level because anytime you bring those students together and you've got a lunch aide who goes table to table even, it could be a mass spread event. What are we doing for lunches at the high school and at the middle school and at Gate? Is that all come together? Are we doing separate rooms or do we have enough space that we can get them spaced out enough or how's that being handled?
For the middle school, I can tell you that once we get the numbers, we had already planned from our November plan to use the aux gym and the cafeteria. Because with our numbers, that would over accommodate one grade for lunch. We'd have plenty of room. Based on the hybrid model, that would even accommodate even better than our plan was before. So we would do some assigned seating, just that way we could cohort again during lunch. I think we had down to two students per circular table. And then when it came down to the aux gym, we were going to do similar to what Mr. Wilson had planned at the high school, is use desks that were spaced appropriately apart. So the students will still be able to speak with each other, but they're still going to have the 6 to 8 feet the way it would look in the aux gym and the cafeteria.
Thanks.
At Gate, we also have desks set up and they're more than 6 feet apart. And we're also having students go there within their cohort. So, all second and third graders go during that time. They don't mix in with the fourth and fifth graders or the sixth and seventh graders. So we are cohorting them to make sure that, once again, they're exposed to the least amount of others.
Thank you.
And Mr. Wilson, can you speak to high school cafeteria lunchtime?
Yeah. So we've spaced out our cafeteria, which can hold 70 to 75 students. They'll be in desks in the main cafeteria. We have tables that will be set up in the aux gym and our wrestling room if needed. And those will be tables that we will have 2 to 3 students sitting at, depending on what kind of table it is, whether it's a rectangle table or one of our circular tables. And our goal is to set up stations inside of our cafeterias so that our students don't have to be in lines. We've been working with Evan Manning, who is a manager at Chartwell's, to develop those plans and where they're going to go. Our aux gym backs up directly to the backside of our actual kitchen area. And so we'll set up some different sections in the different areas and have 2 or 3 opportunities in each area for our students to go and pick those up and then go have a seat. All of our seats will be socially distant. And again, because we'll be in a hybrid model, we were originally planning for 4 lunches with a lot of students, and now we'll maintain our 4 lunches in hopes that we'll be able to get everybody back in, and that way it'll be consistent as we move through the year, but our numbers will be relatively low in those areas.
Thanks.
Ms. Brault, can I also answer your question about some of the specifics? So at the high school, we've had a team called the Back to School team that we've been working on specifics for about the last 4 months. We've walked around the building. And it's the teachers that have been working with myself. We're actually working on a document to be able to share out. So we went over it with our staff today and gave them an opportunity to ask some questions. But our plan is to share that out with our parents and our students for them to recognize and see what different protocols and norms are going to be in place. And when we share that document with Dr. Schwartz, he's more than welcome to share that with you guys so that you can see what we're doing. And we've gone through things from the classroom to what bathroom looks like, to what entry and entrance looks like, to protocols of bathroom passes and how we're going to clean things. So our team has done a really great job with those.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. And we have your schedule up now on the screen. And much like, again, middle school and GATE, maintaining the block schedule with your purple and gold days.
Yep.
Where A through L will attend on the beginning of the week days, and end of the week would be M through Z with, again, the same asynchronous support day on Wednesdays. And so, again, maintaining the block format throughout the day as what students are accustomed to currently in their remote situation. And again, much like we heard Mr. Ort discussed with us, is that students that are wishing to stay remote would still be participating synchronously with the students in the classroom at the high school throughout these periods.
Correct. Yeah, I think Terry did a great job of describing the situation when Mr. Ort was talking. So I really don't have anything to add. I think Terry did a nice job of describing that.
So these schedules that I have briefed with you help to maintain the equity of students, whether they are staying remote or they are joining Inseat. It's trying to keep things consistent between those groups, within those groups, and also looking at what is most feasible from a social distancing perspective, what is also from a routine and consistency standpoint. And we know none of these schedules are ideal. And we know that half the people will like them and half the people won't. We know that. And that, unfortunately, we're not going to meet everyone's needs with whatever schedule we go with. But we have to take a schedule that preserves the best that we can with the variables that we have to work under, and provide the best that we can to our students. And these are the schedules that, in moving into a hybrid format as a proposal, that best meets the needs. It also eliminates a lot of the disruption that could occur with other schedules. We're hoping that of the staffing changes, that those staffing changes are minimal. We know that majority of the staffing changes that have to occur will be the staffing changes at the elementary level, because we are, again, staying true to the choice of having an Avondale teacher to teach remote, and being a part of that cohort. And so that will necessitate, some changes. So it is possible that students primarily at the elementary level may have a teacher that's different than the current teacher they have now when the changes are made. That's just a drawback because we have a finite number of staff. And so we have to reallocate those responsibilities as we get the feedback from these reconfirmation surveys. So that is a downside. But again, none of this is ideal, but it is, I'll say, our best case scenario under the current variables we have to work with.
And Dr. Schwartz, I assume that once we opt in and go back into class, that this schedule or this format would remain for the remainder of the year, that there's not going to be an opportunity to come back from remote, outside of emergency and exigent circumstances, that this is what you commit to is what you're buying for the rest of the year.
Yeah, that is, certainly we'll take, case by case scenarios of situations where we have to, but we really want people, when we get to the brass tacks of all this, we're looking for, our commitment is to hit the ground running in implementation on the 18th of February. So that really leaves 3.5 months of the school year left. So we are looking for that 3.5 month commitment in one or the other. Again, it becomes extremely disruptive when students are going from one mode to another mode, within that, because likely you'll be changing teachers, and if you're going from remote to Inseat, it's going to be with a different teacher, and it creates a transition that's often difficult on the student, and it's disruptive to the classrooms. And for 3.5 months, you need to make a commitment for 3.5 months. So that's what we're asking. And again, if there's emergency situations or things that we have to look at on a case-by-case basis, we'll certainly entertain those. Our timeline is such that we would put out the surveys on Wednesday this week, and begin to collect the information on a family's choice of in-seat versus remote. We would leave that window open for that survey a week. When people are saying, well, gee, why you leave it open for a week? It should just take a day or two for people to respond. Well, they don't. There are people that fill that survey out the minute they get it, and there are people that we have to hound to get the information. So we do have to give ample time, which is a week, it's through a weekend, to get the results, to validate what we need to do ultimately to create the individual schedules, and to then make changes in staffing. And that would occur then the following couple of weeks to get those schedules together based on that information, make the staffing changes that need to be made, and then communicate those new placements or those new schedules to families and to students. And then we run into midwinter break with February. So this would be, our proposal would be to then allow for that process to ensue up to midwinter break, teachers getting classrooms ready, all of that. And then once we return from that midwinter break on that Thursday, we would have that, they come back on Wednesday. Wednesday would be sort of a prep day for the teachers to get ready. And then that Thursday, February 18th, would be the first day for students. And that would be the first day in the new schedule. That offers ample time for us to get prepared instructionally, make the staffing changes that we need to make. And it also allows time for our staff to receive their vaccines. So as you know, today was the first day that the governor announced the new tier of eligibility, and educators are part of that next tier for vaccinations. And so many of our staff already have appointments in that second week of February to get that accomplished. And so this allows us ample time for staff to get themselves vaccinated as well. So we're trying to work in a timeline that accomplishes all of that in preparedness. So the proposal is that we would move to this hybrid model and continue to offer the choice for those that want to be in seat in this model and for those that want to continue staying remote. We want to respect that and commence Thursday, February 18th in this new model.
So, Ms. Monroe, it looked like you had something to weigh in there.
I wanted just to back up to what Dr. Shores shared about the timeline for the enrollment confirmation completion. We have received questions. We know that many community members would like that window to be a smaller turnaround time. In addition to all of the information that Dr. Shores shared, I'd like just everybody on the Zoom call to appreciate that while we have, I think, around 320 people participating in this meeting, which is fabulous, it still doesn't represent 100% of our families. And the week window, like the 1 week window that includes a weekend, really is an attempt to provide an opportunity and honor our community stakeholders for reciprocal communication, meaning that principals will have an opportunity to communicate out towards their stakeholders, but parents would also be able to reach out to their respective building leaders and ask for, clarifying questions or understanding. Many of our families benefit from talking through their decision. So I just would like those of us that are on the call to just offer some grace to our community members who benefit from that week. It is essential to give that to them.
So,
Can I ask?
oh, go ahead.
Can I ask a quick question? How does this compare to our Oakland County counterparts or the other districts surrounding us?
So,
do you have any idea?
Yeah, so most districts that are going back in seat are going back in I'll say a similar type of a hybrid format. And again, you see, hybrid formats, particularly from an elementary perspective, either the 2 full day a week or the half day every day type scenario with PLC asynchronous time built into their calendar. So this model, mirrors much of what you may see elsewhere, like West Bloomfield, for example, has a model very similar to this that they've been doing when they weren't remote. So these aren't ideal, but none of this in COVID has been ideal. But it's the best in terms of what we can offer equitably, consistently, under the variables that we have to work under.
And if I can add some color commentary. So I sit on every 2 weeks, I sit on a meeting with board presidents from throughout the county, as well as the Oakland County Health Department. It gives us an opportunity to hear what each other are doing in our districts, as well as to be able to ask questions face to face with the health department to help guide that discussion. And of the districts that were represented, we had about 26 districts represented in there, which is huge because I think there's what, 28 in Oakland County or something along that line. So
Yep.
we had a really good representation this last time and a very good discussion. Brandon and Oxford, I believe, are the two that really have been in this model since day one of the year and really didn't let up at any point. The vast majority of those that had a plan in place and were going back in January were in a very, very similar hybrid model. As a matter of fact, I'm a little surprised that we've got any specials that are being done with students in classrooms, because most of those that are in hybrid models, their specials are all being done remote, because that way they, as we said, we don't have many specials teachers. So if you start moving those specials teachers around, it increases that opportunity to take germs from one place to another. So all of those were doing their specials in an asynchronous manner and sending kits home and things of that nature, and then making a special teachers available. But this is very common for those that already have their plans executed and are going in January. So.
And I know Colleen Brunei, our Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction, who sits in with curriculum directors from throughout the county, they also have these same conversations and co-plan with one another. Colleen, I don't know if you have any insights from where you sit with your group.
Good evening, everybody. Yes, so as you have explained to everyone here on the Zoom call tonight, this is the model that most districts have embraced. Anybody who's gone back in person has done some sort of hybrid model. There are some districts that tried to go back full days at the elementary and then had to pull back from that. There are also districts that, and I've interviewed plenty of people in not just our area, but up north and in other states, plenty of people who have been doing a hybrid model with live streaming and recommended an asynchronous day in the week to gather and plan, because you have students that are both in person and remote. And it is so important for our teachers to continue to plan together, whatever setting that they are in. So that is the current pulse around the county from people in my position who are planning instruction, is that we are so proud of our teachers and our parents and our kids and everyone, our administrators, who have been learning so much during these times, that we feel that that a hybrid model is going to give us an opportunity to get back into the buildings and as many students that we can, and serve those students who want to be back in, but that we also are just so much more capable in the remote setting, as it's been, we're coming up on a year. So that is really the pulse around the county, is that this is one of the best ways to go at this time with the numbers the way that they are.
Now, we also know that there is not any guarantee that there won't be a disruption, that we won't have to have a classroom or 2 or 3 have to go remote because of quarantining. Those realities are still real, and schools that are doing hybrid, are still experiencing where certain, classrooms have to be shut down and those students go remote for a duration because of the quarantining. The CDC has not changed the quarantining rules in light of the vaccines being out. So even though somebody is or has been vaccinated, even if they've been exposed to somebody who has COVID, they still have to quarantine. So irregardless if they've, at this point in time, if they've been vaccinated or not, they still have to quarantine. So it is still going to pose potential staffing issues in certain situations where, you know, there may be a disruption that we have to, for X amount of days, have students in that class be remote because of a quarantining situation. So, you know, and that's the fear, and that has been the demise of in-person instruction since the beginning of the year. It's really been because of staffing. When again, the number of cases of positivity in the county have increased, well, that directly impacts, you know, staff. And so the more of those cases affected, you have more staff that become affected and consequently can't be in seat. And so that has posed problems. And with the sub shortage, it becomes where you can't hold programs or you can't hold classes because of an issue with not being able to cover staffing. That reality has not disappeared. That will still be a threat for us to try and work around. So in those cases where if we get into this situation and we have to quarantine a classroom or, you know, 2 or 3, you know, people are going to have to understand that that's the natural order of this situation, unfortunately.
Dr. Schwartz, just it may behoove to remind our public and the board members that we did at the beginning of this year get get nurses from the Oakland County Health Department through some COVID funding, and those have been that funding has been extended to allow those nurses to continue with us through the end of the school year. So we've got direct access to the Oakland County Health Department, but also, was it my understanding that the governor is ramping up rapid testing through that same channel so that we would have the ability to rapid test teachers that wanted to once a week? Are you hearing the same thing?
So yes, so we are hearing the same thing. We don't have a whole lot of details because those details just were unveiled on Friday with her announcement about wanting to get students back in school. That was part of the new, I'll say, learning pathway, that roadmap that we are under currently. We don't know a whole lot about that yet. You know, that is something that we're further going to explore with our nurses in terms of that testing. I personally have issues with administering that testing as an educator. I mean, we are not medical professionals. And so I strongly believe that we as educators should not be administering that test. That should be something that is either done by our nurses or by some other medical professional. And so those are some things that we are looking into. But that is, according to what guidelines came out on Friday, that is something that is going to be availed to staff, and I'm hearing students as well. But again, I'm really hesitant about our school staff administering that when it's really a medical issue, medical procedure that we as educators shouldn't be doing.
Yeah. But it's good to know that there are still those health supports being put into,
correct,
you know, this type of situation. So.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah, we just don't know enough about it just yet, but yes.
Dr.
Yeah,
Schwartz,
Marianne.
may I, when appropriate, or if this is the time, I'd like to be able to expand on programming for our basic classroom students in a hybrid situation. So if this is an appropriate time.
Yeah, go right ahead. Sure.
So one, I want to thank just parent feedback, because even in the real time of this meeting, I learned that I did not articulate this description well enough for some of our parents to be able to make an informed selection on their enrollment confirmation. So if people on the call can, I understand that this may not affect everyone, but we have basic classroom or self-contained students who are currently face-to-face 2 to 4 days a week. And the question that I was asked very appropriately was, will that remain the same with the hybrid model? If you do the math, it would appear that some of those options may decrease. So I'd like to just take a moment and explain that currently our face-to-face students, with the exception of a couple of programs, are basically on a 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. schedule. What would change is at the appropriate age and grade level, students would be following the bell schedule of their school. So AM or PM at elementary, and then the 2 rotating days at the high school, middle school, or gate. However, where I am able to staff appropriately and safely educate students, I'm looking to maintain as much service as possible. We are responsible for offering all of our special education students the same access to education that we offer to our general education students. However, where we can go above and beyond that, we are striving to do so. Some of our specialty programs, because of the size or needs of the students, regulate just a smaller group. So based on the board meeting outcome tonight, it will enable me to be able to connect with staffing, and then each of those lead staff members will communicate directly with families the way that we have developed those relationships previously. So if you are a special education parent and you are listening, specifically if you are a special education parent of a student in a basic classroom or face-to-face program right now, what I'd like you to take away is that we will be following the established school schedule, and wherever possible, maintain the maximum number of hours of service that we can safely provide with staffing and COVID-19 routines and regulations in place. So again, thank you to parents who are able to reach out and ask for that clarification.
Thank you, Mary Ann. So any questions, board members? I know this is a ton of information and ton of scheduling information. And for our public parents, these schedules you'll receive these schedules that you can glance at for, again, these are just skeleton schedules, but for your decision making, they'll be included in communications as you're filling out your options in terms of how you'd like to proceed. And also, principals are available for information, and I know they are planning, again, information sessions to garner this information specific to their buildings. So this is a generalized overview of those schedules conceptually. So board members, any other questions about schedules, the proposal, hybrid?
I think it was very well explained. Thank you for that.
And again, I reiterate, I don't like them. I don't like the schedules. And I said it from day one, I don't like these hybrid schedules. But it is our reality based on the variables we have to work around and the amount of people that we anticipate that want that social experience for their children back in school. And so with that comes some sacrifice on what's ideal.
Thank you for that information.
Yep, appreciate it.
And that is the superintendent's report for this evening.